Imagine a weapon so powerful, so easy to use, and so terrifying that the Catholic Church declared it an instrument of Satan and tried to ban it all across Europe. A weapon that would allow a simple peasant with barely any training to kill an armored knight who had spent his entire life preparing for battle. This is the story of the crossbow and how it changed medieval warfare forever. When we think of medieval Europe, we imagine swords, shields, and knights charging into battle. But in the shadows of that romantic image lies a weapon that rewrote the rules of war. The crossbow didn't just appear, it arrived like a shockwave. It disrupted armies, threatened the ruling nobility, and sparked one of the most dramatic moral and religious panics in medieval history. The crossbow wasn't born in Europe. Its earliest form appeared in ancient China, over 2,500 years ago. Chinese armies used them in massive formations, firing volleys of bolts with deadly precision. The Greeks had their own version called the gastrophetes, a kind of belly bow used in siege warfare. The Romans experimented with handheld crossbows too, though they never became widespread. And then, the technology faded from Europe for over 6 centuries. It wasn't until around the 10th or 11th century that the crossbow suddenly re-emerged, this time in medieval Europe, and this time with a design that was simple, cheap, and incredibly effective. To understand why the crossbow caused such panic, we first need to understand early medieval warfare. Knights were the elite class. They trained from childhood, wore expensive armor, rode horses with lances, and were often the dominant force on the battlefield. And then the crossbow was introduced. It was a weapon that required almost no training. It could punch easily through a knight's chainmail with a single shot. A longbowman would often require years of training to achieve the same results. A weapon that allowed a poor peasant with little training to kill a nobleman with a single shot. In the eyes of the church and the ruling nobles, this wasn't just a military shift, it was a social earthquake. The crossbow broke the monopoly that the knights held on warfare. It made warfare, at the time, more democratic and far more deadly for the powerful noble class. This panic reached its peak in 1139 at the Second Lateran Council. Here, Pope Innocent II issued one of the strangest declarations in history. Crossbows and longbows were to be banned for the use against Christians. The church called them murderous and hateful to God. Why? Because the crossbow threatened the entire social order. Knights were supposed to be the backbone of Christian armies of the time. They were rich, elite, and politically powerful. But now, a crossbowman could kill a knight from 150 yards, undermining the traditional chivalric feudal warfare. The church had realized the crossbow had become a threat to the hierarchy of medieval Europe. Of course, this ban had one exception. One could still use crossbows against heathens, the non-Christians of the time. And so, during the Crusades, crossbows were used extensively and gained a fearsome reputation in the Middle East. Despite the church's decree, the ban didn't last. Secular kings entirely ignored it, while mercenary groups embraced their new technology. Cities and states adopted it for defense. In siege warfare, crossbows were devastating. They could be fired from a kneeling covered position, something the famed longbow of the time could not. This enabled users to fire from behind walls, from towers, and from narrow slits in fortifications. Famously, King Richard I died due to gangrene after a crossbow shot to the shoulder. The crossbow was simply too effective to give up. By the 12th and 13th century, crossbowmen had become a crucial part of European armies. An example of this were the Genoese crossbowmen, a mercenary group who were famously hired all across Europe for their skills. The church could condemn the weapon, but they couldn't stop the march of its technology. The crossbow shaped the future of medieval conflicts. It forced armor to evolve, from chainmail coverings to heavy plate armor. It changed battlefield tactics. Peasants and common soldiers could be trained into deadly squads for extremely cheap. It would later pave the way for gunpowder weapons, which followed the same blueprint: simple to use, effective at range, and devastating to armor. By the late Middle Ages, the age of the knight was fading, and the crossbow was one of the weapons that helped bring that era to its end. Its legacy is clear. It revolutionized medieval warfare and challenged the medieval military hierarchy, and proved that technology, not tradition nor religion, drives the future of battle. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, Be sure to like and subscribe.